Porsche has dropped a monster of an EV, and that is the Taycan Turbo GT, which set a lap record for the Laguna Seca track for EVs. And I was a little bit worried when they first dropped the new Taycan because they changed the front end to be a lot more static and losing those cuts, beautiful organic cuts that I loved in the previous Taycan. But thankfully they're back here. They were also available in the Cross Turismo when the new Taycan was first unveiled. So let's have a look at this article from Car and Driver before we jump into Photoshop and compare the front, side, and rear, and also the interior. Minor changes in the interior. I'm not sure I can see any changes in the interior, to be honest, but you're gonna help me out with that and see if you can spot anything. So Porsche introduces Taycan Turbo GT with a record-setting lap at Laguna Seca. So the 2025 Turbo GT can go from 0 to 60 in 2.1 seconds. Boasts a top speed of up to 190 miles per hour. And every time I hear these numbers for top speeds on an EV, I always wonder how long will the battery last. If you're an Autobahn going from Munich to Berlin, can you go there going 190 miles per hour without recharging? Probably not. I mean, you wouldn't go 190 miles per hour the entire stretch anyway, so it's kind of unreasonable to think about. And then you have the Weissach package, which drops 157 pounds compared to the Turbo S model. And the previous record was done by the Tesla Model S Plaid in 2020 with a 130.3. So the new Taycan here, Turbo GT, so 133 for the Model S Plaid. This beat it by almost 3 seconds, so 127.87 for the new Taycan GT. This is a proper track beast, this car. Prices for the new 2025 Taycan Turbo GT starting at $231,995, so it's definitely not a cheap EV. Both versions offer a range of around 340 miles, not bad at all, and a continuous 777 horsepower from both a front and a new, more powerful rear motor. Peak power climbs to briefly to 1,019 horsepower. These numbers these days that I keep hearing about, specifically EVs, but also internal combustion engines with these new hybrid technologies, is just insane. We live in an era, I think it's a new era or a modern era of the 60s and the 70s where there was this horsepower race, but now it's in a different form. So the Weissach cars gets a different front diffuser, deflectors beneath the body, and a big wing. And this wing does so much to this design. Again, and I wish you could just opt for this wing on a normal Taycan as well. And all of this aero creates 485 pounds of downforce while at speed. You don't get any rear seats. Instead, it's just a carbon fiber bucket in the rear for the Weissach package. B pillar trims, mirror shells, and door sills are all lightweight carbon fiber as well. You get 21-inch lightweight forged wheels, ceramic brakes, and a specially tuned active suspension on the Turbo GT. And you get this even without the Weissach package. Very, very cool car. And here you can see the team that set the record. Beautiful color for this Turbo GT, this purple. So let's jump in and have a closer look at this in a Photoshop here. And let's see what's going on with this new Porsche. So up top we do have, I do believe this is the 2020 Taycan Turbo, which I still prefer over the new one, because you can see the differences here is that it became a lot more static, even though we still have this beautiful cut that we have in the previous Taycan up here. Feels more rounded, more organic, more automotive design in my opinion. Beautifully done with this cut to house the headlights. And this is also a round fender, so you have a continuous curvature going right here. If we look at the new one here and what they did, we have still the same cut, but you can see that it got a lot more static and a lot more robotic with these corners, very sharp corners, and also this wing, which I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of, to have this piece just be a separate part. You can see it more clearly on this side right here. It's still a good looking car for sure, one of the best looking EVs out there today in my opinion, but I still prefer the previous Taycan Turbo because of the more smooth lines. You can see that the fender here now, the top part is also more squared off because we have a sort of not a sharp corner, but a more defined corner in this case, and definitely a more defined corner on the intersection with this line that then cuts in and creates the side for the headlight in the front end. The lower section has also been redesigned. We still have, of course, the opening, because with 19 horsepower or whatever it was, you're definitely gonna need some cooling in the lower section. And we also have a very similar design for the previous 2020 Taycan Turbo S. So let me know which one you prefer when you look at the front ends here. Again, I do think this is still one of the best looking EVs out there, but I still prefer the old Porsche, because I think that has the old Taycan, because I think that has more of this organic, soft lines and surfaces that I'm used to seeing from Porsche. Now, looking at the side view here, the lower Taycan Turbo GT is obviously with the Weissach package, because you can see the wing here. You can also see the big, huge rotors in the front end, and this is the view where you can't really tell the differences between these two. We still have the baseline down here cutting in, and have a clear line from the front end going through the side and then coming back beautifully in the taillight as well. Nicely done with this styling here, with the typical Porsche clean lines, and also the greenhouse look like it could be an internal combustion engine thanks to the positioning of the A-pillar. Huge gap from the front wheel cap to the starting point of the A-pillar. Looks like it could actually house some sort of engine underneath the hood in the front end. These have some blade wheels on the 2020, which I actually think, again, is one of the better looking EV wheels that I've seen, because normally they're all covered up and don't look good at all. Now, looking at the new Taycan Turbo GT down here, first of all, love the color. Beautiful, deep purple color in this case. Everything is blacked out. The trims around the windows are black. And last but not least, the big change here is going to be the big wing, Weissach wing that you have in the rear end. Other than that, there's really not a lot of changes here. We do have some aero bits added to this package as well. You can see that here, specifically in the front end, adding this 485 pound of downforce at speed, which is of course necessary if you want to drive this and set new lap records in the corners specifically, to keep the handling on point. Now, looking at the rear end, and here you can clearly see some changes compared to the side view, for example, which is very hard to spot the differences. But up top, of course, the 2020 looking beautiful. I love these taillights and the big chamfer that we have here with the model name in the chamfer itself, looking very nice. Now, looking at the Weissach package here, we have a double wing situation, and this is a beautiful treatment of the rear end, because not only do we have the Weissach wing properly positioned up here up top, all in carbon fiber, you also have a nice ducktail that really sends this design off in a side view. And I love how it goes in from this muscle and then softly up here, just a small subtle little ducktail that does so much to this design. You also have new vents here. I'm not sure if these are actually functional. They kind of have to be, because this is a turbo GT, so everything should be functional in this design, but they look like they're pretty covered up here. But this is something that we didn't have on the 2020 Turbo S, which creates more of a clean rear end, of course, and not so much track focused when you look at the design overall. But I think the changes specifically in the rear enhances this design, and I definitely prefer the changes that they made in the rear to the more chiseled chamfers that we have in the front end with the new 2025 design. Here we can also see this Weissach wing that we have added to the sides of the rear end, and also the front end right here sticking out. But thankfully, they did not change anything when it comes to this beautiful graphics that are the taillight graphics right here, again with the Taycan GT letters housed on this chamfer itself. Last but not least, the interior. So here it is. Up top we do have the old Taycan from 2020. Down low we do have the brand new one, and honestly I can't see any differences at all between these two cars, and that is not a bad thing, because I think still a nice interior for the Taycan with this gauge cluster up here. Doesn't really have a cap for it. I would like to see some sort of cap for this gauge cluster up top, but that's just a small detail. You still have the same gauge cluster in the new 2025 model year right here. You also have the infotainment screen being pretty well integrated, I would say, in between these two main bars that we still had in the previous Taycan up here. You also have the air vent here still being intact. Further, it's cropped in this case. I do believe this is an optional view or screen that you can add to your Taycan. I'm not sure if I would necessarily add that to my Taycan, but overall it's a very clean interior and it looks very simplistic, and I do like that about Porsche in general. Their simplicity and the evolution instead of revolution when it comes to design. Last but not least, the stopwatch up top is of course intact on specifically the Turbo GT, because you want to keep track of your lap times when you're driving this car. Overall, a great performance EV by Porsche, and it would make sense that Porsche would reclaim fastest EV over Tesla, since Porsche is such a performance brand and is sort of synonymous with track cars. But when it comes to the exterior design, specifically in the front end, I still prefer the previous generation Taycan, because to me that just feels more Porsche with the more fluid, soft surfaces and lines.